Morning, everyone. I think it might just be afternoon, but as far as I can work out in crypto, everyone says good morning no matter what time of day it is, so I'll start there. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Mark. I am the General Counsel for Alchemy, and prior to completely going in onto the dark side, my background is as a lawyer in international private wealth and structuring. I appreciate that Friday lunchtime is a difficult slot. Most of you are thinking about lunch. Most of you who went out last night, the hangovers are probably starting to kick in. The caffeine levels are starting to run low. So we are going to try and keep this as light-hearted as tax gets, but I have a limited playing field. It is tax after all. So today we are here to tell you a story. And like all stories, I'm joined with a wonderful cast of narrators, but this is just a story. This is not intended to cover advice or anything you can go away and solve immediately. So please do bear us in mind, as storytellers, we will try and weave you a tale. We're going to set the scene. So any good story will start with a nice prologue as to where we are. We'll do some world building and introduce you to our hero. We will have a wise counsellor, well, wise-ish, and tell you what you may want to do. We will have that person who always isn't quite what they seem, and perhaps at the end we will leave you with the question of whether or not there really is a big bad witch involved. So that is plenty from me, although I will almost certainly involve the conversation later on. So I'm going to introduce you to my storytellers, or the panel as they prefer to be called. I have Louise, Ben, Jamie and Dan. All their photos and details are there. I'll let them talk about themselves, otherwise I really won't shut up. But we are going to start. We're going to start the story by letting you know where we are in crypto land at the moment, and I'll let Jamie take that to start with.
Thank you for that interesting intro there, Mark. Before we kick this off, again, quick intro to myself. My name is Jamie Nuttall. I am the director and shareholder at Miner Accountants for all things crypto and taxation, one of the leading, amongst these guys here, crypto accounting firms in the entire country. So where are we with crypto at the moment, taxation? There's not too much going on in the last sort of year, to be perfectly honest. Relatively recently, I think exactly a month ago, some legislation came out. And this was around how crypto assets are now considered personal property. What does that mean to us, degens and retail investors? Not much, if I'm perfectly honest. There is a small caveat to that, in that there should be more protection. So if you were to have your wallets stolen or you're rugged, put your hand up if you've witnessed or been involved in a rug, yeah? Lost a wallet perhaps. What happened to it? Did you get it back? Did you get any backing? Probably not. Now with this new legislation, that might change things. What I'm more interested in is the potential for the future and how this could be a building block to something much more beneficial to us retail investors. So for example, if you wanted to invest in certain asset classes in a tax efficient way, have we heard of ISAs? Yep, hand up again if you heard of an ISA, £20,000 a year, we know what that is. Can we put crypto in an ISA at the moment? Nope, we cannot. I believe that this particular legislation may end up being the initial building block towards something like that, where the average retail investor could benefit from the tax relief for being in an ISA. Where do we go from there? Perhaps pension schemes. Now, pension schemes are very, very tax efficient. So that could be the next stage after that. Now, it is rare to have your pension scheme exposed to crypto at the moment. Not impossible, but rare. So maybe in the future we see this becoming more common. Now, if we combine the two together, you would see a huge opportunity for retail investors to effectively, efficiently, and tax relief receiving, I guess, on a lot of your crypto portfolio. Now, I'm pretty sure if I won't ask you to raise your hands again, but if I did, everyone put their hand up to saying, yeah, I want tax-free crypto. And that's the best thing that I think could happen in the near future too. That might be a stretch, but yeah, that's where I think we are at the moment, where we could head, to be perfectly honest, Mark.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conundrum is to try and solve the taxation problem for now, which you mentioned the idea of a crypto ISA, and I think that has got quite a long way to run. I think pensions, in my experience, isn't really the first thing that degens really think about. I mean, most people in this room are quite young compared to the average crowd at a tax talk, and that's normally a little bit older. So, yeah, I agree. You know, we're in a time of evolution and change. There are some potentially positive outcomes. I would like to point out that Ben was going to be the hero before he wore the Spice Girls t-shirt today, but that really did settle it. So, Ben, you can be our hero. You want to set up a new crypto business. You know, you've heard about all of these ideas, options, places you might want to go. What is going through your mind?
I'm worried now that you've called me a hero, and I'm not going to live up to that with what I'm going to say, and I'm going to live long enough to find out that I'm the villain, but we will crack on anyway. So the things that we need to consider if we've got a new idea, we've got a new project, is, well, how do we go about doing that? And sorry, my name's Ben, and I am a tax partner. That's why I'm on stage, long-term Spice Girls fan. And what we need to think about is, well, how do we do that? In the UK, as I'm sure most of you know, we've got regulations that really restrict what we're able to do. You certainly can't do a token issuance in the UK. So you need to go offshore. That's great. Where do you go? What do you do? We have about 50 years worth, if not in some cases 100 years worth of anti-tax avoidance measures that prevent people from basically taking their funds, taking their assets, putting them offshore. So you cannot, as a UK tax resident or individual who's domiciled in the UK, simply go and set up a BVI company, earn profits in that BVI company, and not pay any tax on the BVI profits. It will be deemed to be arising on you whether that's actually paid out to you or not. So we then need to start thinking very closely about, well, how do we structure this? Actually, you know, do we have a UK company, and actually does that UK company then set up a BVI company? Well, actually the same rules still apply in that instance. So we've got a lot of layers here that we need to try and peel back and look at so that actually we do things in a correct manner and we're not opening ourselves up to more risk than actually we were looking to get into from the start. And once we've done that, I mean, it entirely depends on the nature of your project, because if you've got a very decentralized project, or depending on your sort of corporate objectives, maybe actually you're looking at some sort of orphan structure that doesn't have any owners. But then you cannot be a director of that company. Otherwise, again, you've got this sort of corporate residence risk that you're going to bring everything back on shore again. So there are ways in which we can address that, and that's what we do at Anderson. I will actually say, by the way, I'm not an international tax expert, but we do have lots of people within the team that are, and we do have a stand in the exhibition centre. If you have any burning international questions, please do come along and ask the people that know about it far more than I do. But these are the things that we have to start considering. I mean, you've got, I've conscious, you've called me a hero and I'm hogging the microphone. That's not hero behaviour, Mark. We've also got to consider things like IHT. You might set up a BVI company, put assets in there, and actually you've now just triggered an IHT issue. There are so many different things that you need to think about. Where are your contractors based? Token founder allocations, you know, actually how do we get tokens to founders? Do we wait until the TGE and then actually give them out once they've got lots of value? Spoilers, no, don't do that. So there's a lot. Sorry, and I've probably held the microphone for too long. And there's probably more exciting things that we could be talking about in terms of where people are and actually the risk that might create in terms of that sort of risk structure.
I mean, Ben has played the reluctant hero perfectly. That's that standard trope of sort of the Frodo Baggins. You know, he's about to go on a long journey. He doesn't really want to be the hero, but realises that there was genuinely no one else available at this moment in time. So, I think, Ben, if where would you summarise probably the 2 or 3 most common places in your experience that people tend to say that they've either structured or are looking to structure? Let's narrow down the possible.
BVI came in UAE, I would say at the moment. We see people who have set up Panama foundations in the Seychelles. Like it's a global playing field, but I would say those are probably the 3 commonest structures that we see.
Yeah, I think I'd probably, in my own experience, add Estonia. I think a lot of Europeans structure through Estonia. A random fact for you, in China, BVI isn't a country, it just means somewhere that's not China. So I've been out in China and been asked to create a Guernsey BVI and realised that something is very lost in translation. So I think one of the points to bear in mind is that as light-hearted as we try and make this, it is unbelievably complicated. I think there are now over 12,000 pages of tax legislation. When I started as a lawyer, many moons ago now, there was a senior partner who did tax, he did some family law, he did some property and a bit of commercial. Now, as Ben has already highlighted, you actually have niche tax specialists in a single tax or in two taxes in different jurisdictions because it is that complicated. No one person is going to have all of the answers. So I think the takeaway point here is being in London, creating an office in the BVI and simply running it as a director or shareholder is not likely to work for you. Some of you will have heard of something called the motive defence, which basically means all of these attribution rules that Ben was mentioning don't apply to you. And while that is true, the motive of avoiding tax is not a good enough motive. That has actually been tested, so you have to do more than just try and avoid tax. But like any hero, now you are Frodo in this instance, he needs a Gandalf. He needs a wise counsel that says, right, you're off on your journey, you've started, what is it that you really should be paying attention to? So Dan, can you be our Gandalf for this moment?
I am happy to be Gandalf at this very moment in time.
You are quite wizardy as well, so I think that fits.
I'll take that. So what I want to talk about is record keeping. I know it's lunchtime and record keeping sounds very boring, but record keeping is kind of like the prerequisite for you understanding your tax position. So not getting yourself into a mess. And then once you've got an understanding of your tax position, that's kind of like a prerequisite to optimizing your tax position. And what kind of catches people out in crypto is, if I just give you like a really simple example, if you're trading stocks and shares, you decide to spend $1,000 buying some BP stock, and then a couple of months later you sell it for $2,000, you've made an $1,000 gain. It's obvious. But with crypto, you might have some Bitcoin, you flip it into Ethereum, you go into Solana, you buy some NFTs, you get rugged, and you might end up losing everything. So you actually have an overall loss, but your tax position could be very, very different. You actually might end up having a gain. So if you can get on top of your record keeping, you can get it into some kind of crypto tax software, that gives you a massive kind of tax optimization unlock. You can start to see, if you've got losses that you might want to get rid of before the end of the tax year and offset other gains. It's going to tell you if you're using your capital gains taxes or not. So it kind of removes this entire disconnect between trading and taxes. And the problem in the UK that we're seeing at the moment is everybody's waiting for a compliance event before you get proactive with your record keeping and sorting out your tax position. So it might be that, holy shit, I need to do a tax return this year, or I've received a nudge letter from HMRC. That's kind of the push you need to kind of do 5 years worth of record keeping for your crypto, when really the time is now. If you can do it now, you can optimize your tax position and you can plan. And I don't know if you've all heard, there's this lady called Rachel who wants to take 39% of your gains, right? If you get ahead today, you can plan for that scenario. If you haven't done your record keeping, you're not using crypto tax software, you're going to lose out. So my kind of key takeaway for you guys is you can either give your money to Rachel or you can do your records and you can keep more of your bags.
Just to jump in there as well, Dan, it's very important that Dan mentioned the 5 years, because most people that come to us, I find, will be in that 5 year sort of period as well. Now, I'm not sure if you guys realise, if you had a loss 5 years ago, you cannot claim that. If you haven't already told HMRC, it is gone. Now, if you think about the timing of the markets right now, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, would you have had a loss at that point? Quite possibly in the last 4 years. So although you go, okay, well, when's the deadline? Well, that ticks over on the 5th of April, that new sort of 4 year bracket. Now, if you were to go to someone today, you probably would have time. But I don't know about you guys, it takes a lot longer when you're dealing with someone's taxes when crypto's involved than you would with someone that doesn't. So you might think 2-3 weeks. No, this can take 12 weeks in some cases, or even longer, depending on circumstances. So yeah, I guess I'm the villain here today. Get it sorted. I I guess.
Jamie's a little bit grumpy just because it's his birthday tomorrow, and he did last night. Somebody did try and guesstimate how old he was going to be, and the person clearly had a couple of beers and decided that Jamie was actually going to be in his hundreds for his birthday, which Jamie was so disappointed with himself he took himself to Nando's, which is a sheer sign that it had all gone horribly wrong. All stories are true, except if they're about me. But just to take, again, we're trying not to make this too technical because, as I say, it is a complex area. But one of the things that people do is they often flip their crypto very quickly, particularly if they're traders or investing in their own portfolio. And one of the traps that exists in the UK is really unfortunately named because it's named the bed and breakfast rules. Now, bed and breakfast is generally considered to be a good thing. Most people like the idea of bed and breakfast, or breakfast in bed, also good. But this is something that is actually really critical when you're looking at people who are often trading crypto. And Dan, do you just want to talk a little bit about that and how that works with sort of softwares and things?
Yeah, sure. So there's this rule called the bed and breakfast rule in the UK. So if you're basically buying an asset and then you're buying it back within 30 days, you're not allowed to crystallize your gain, basically. And this is what catches a ton of people out. Because you have no visibility of it unless you're doing your record keeping, you're basically creating unknown gains, and you don't have any opportunity to basically optimize unless you're doing your record keeping.
So with the budget coming up on the 30th of October, it ties into Dan's record keeping because you have to know what your current position is. Let's say you've got some crypto, standing at a big gain, and you're thinking, actually, I was going to sell it next year anyway. I'd rather sell it now, pay 20% tax because I know that's the rate, instead of what might come after the budget. What you can do is sell your crypto a couple of days before the budget. I would do it a couple of days before because I know Mark doesn't think new rates would come in straight away, but we've got precedent. They have come in straight away in the past, and they've actually come in the midnight before the budget date. So 30th of October, they deliver the budget at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. It might be midnight that day. So sell your crypto a couple of, not investment advice, please don't sell your crypto on my say so. If you decided you wanted to sell your crypto, this is the tax effect. So you would sell your crypto, let's say the CGT rates go up. You think, yeah, I really don't want to pay that rate, that new rate. So I'm really pleased I sold a couple of days before the budget. I'm going to be quite happy to pay 20% tax. That tax will be payable in January 2026. Save the fiat, ready to pay that tax, because that tax will be payable no matter what happens to your crypto portfolio. The hard thing is, if the rates go up and you do want to bank that gain, you're going to have to stay out of that token for 30 days. And, you know, it's hard to stay out of the market for that long. I appreciate it. You'll definitely not buy that token back because you'll be actively trying not to, but also be careful of any other acquisitions. So if you get rewards in that same token or business income, you know, employment, self-employment income, you can't receive that token at all in the next 30 days, but that banks you that gain, taxed at 20%, happy days. If the rates don't go up, everyone pretty much thinks they will, but if they don't, a couple of days later, just buy it back. So because of the 30-day matching rule, for tax purposes, you make practically no gain or loss because of this matching. So as long as you buy back within 30 days of that disposal, a couple of days before the budget, you've got only a gain or loss to the extent that the price has slipped in those few days you're out of the market. So yeah, that's my...
Can I bridge that as well? And just to reiterate both your points, it's the importance of having up-to-date data.
Yeah.
We see too many people, I think, that will come along and go, right, either if they're perhaps a new client, they're putting onto software the first time, or they will wait till the end of the tax year and go, oh, how did I do? And unfortunately, as you're all aware, in crypto there are so many transactions, right? So it's the message of just keeping on top of it. And I know it's annoying and it can be quite frustrating. We certainly help a lot of people try to keep it up in real time so that each month you know where you're at. You can even go into the software and go, hypothetically, if I dispose of this, what happens? And that's a really important place to be in, where we are either facing rate changes or changes in the market. So sorry.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, that's the idea of hedging. So, just to perhaps simplify, the idea of selling shortly before budget and then either holding that for the 30 days in order to cap the gain at 20% if that's your current rate, or then repurchasing and just suffering the potential marginal loss if there's an investment change, is an interesting area. And I think we are going to conclude this by looking a bit to the future, to the sequel of this book. I mean, I had no intention of talking about The Lord of the Rings whatsoever, but now we've got hobbits and talks of breakfasts and bed, and hobbits are all into their food. So we will talk a bit about the potential sequel. But before we do that, one of the important areas that crypto doesn't address, in my opinion, is who you are. And you may think I'm talking about doxing, which I'm actually not at this moment in time. But where we are going to go to is Louise, who, for these purposes, will be Galadriel. Again, I had no intention of doing Lord of the Rings. I'm literally making this up as I go. But Galadriel in Lord of the Rings is somebody who can tell whether somebody is good or bad. She's able to look into people's souls. And I'm not saying she's...
Am I Sauron in this situation? Because I'm running out of characters
I'll just
here.
be quiet for a minute. Just.
So, in this instance, I think Louise is going to touch upon now the idea of contractors, because just calling yourself a contractor to a business isn't actually the determinative factor of whether or not you are a contractor, and it really is an important distinction. So, Louise, do you want to talk a bit about how this works?
Yeah, sure. I'm Louise. I'm an associate director at Wright Vigar. We're a traditional regional firm of accountants, quite a big firm of accountants, but for the last 6 years we've built up a specialist crypto accounting and tax team, and we help out a lot of individuals and businesses with crypto tax and accounting problems. So that's our day-to-day challenges. So almost every conversation I have with a crypto client is they're either a contractor working for a Web3 business getting paid in the native token or USDT or whatever, or they're a Web3 business who engage with contractors. And whichever camp you're in, it's really important to think about the tax employment status. You might have heard of IR35. Another term for that, a newer term, is the off-payroll working rules. They're exactly the same thing, and all it boils down to is this person who's working for another business, are they, in the eyes of the taxman, are they more self-employed, or are they more like an employee for tax purposes? And there are no hard and fast rules. It's determined by case law, and there's lots of guidance. But there's no tick box to say, yes, if you do this, this and the other, you'll be fine. It's very much looking at the relationship, looking at the contract, looking at the way you work in practice, making sure they marry up, and then just looking at the whole case in the round. So a few key things you look at is there a personal service required from one individual, or is there a right of substitution? What's the level of control that this business has over the worker, and the right of control, not just the actual control? And then what obligations are there between the parties? An employee is obligated to come to work, and equally an employer is obligated to provide work for the employee. So contract is very much free and easy, and it has to be that really relaxed relationship. They're the key things to look at, and I could talk for probably 3 hours on this, but we'll not go there. So the key problems I find for crypto contractors, you're the contractor, you're working for a business, you're getting paid in crypto. You think you're self-employed, but are you? Maybe not. It's important to check the situation out. There's a HMRC CEST checker, CEST. It's pretty good if you get the answer you want. Keep it on file. in case it gets checked. But you do have to really understand the guidance. It has to reflect the contract. You know, that there are a lot of loopholes to jump through. But the point is that if you're an individual working for a business that's wholly offshore, and I see this all the time, no presence in the UK at all, it's not that business's responsibility to work out the tax status, it's yours. And you'll merrily decide this is self-employment, you'll put it on your tax return, you'll declare it. But if it should have been employment, then you should have been operating your own pay-as-you-earn scheme, like on a monthly basis, and paying pay-as-you-earn and NI as though it's employment income. So it's on you. And if you're working not in your own name, you're working through your own limited company, you might set it up to do all your contracting. Again, if your client is wholly offshore, no presence in the UK, it's all on you to get that right, and you're meant to be operating IR35, which effectively means everything the business generates is your taxable employment income. There's no tax efficiency opportunities like, you know, other shareholders or employer pension contributions. From a contractor's, have I gone too far? From a contractor's point of view, it's just the opposite thing. So, you know, if you're a business and you're employing contractors, if they're UK resident, if they're working in their own name, it's always your responsibility to check out their status and put them on the payroll if they should be employees, or run them through an agency. If you've got someone working through their own company, it depends what your business size is, because if you're a small business, then it's the limited company who has to operate the rules, and they have to operate IR35, so you get out of it. But once you become non-small, as you grow as a business, then it becomes your responsibility. And it's just something you really need to pay attention to, and not many people do.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think, you know, just calling yourself an elf doesn't make you an elf. If you're short and portly, have hairy feet and smoke too much grass, you're probably a hobbit, irrespective of whether or not you want to be an elf. So we've talked already a little bit about what the future may hold and whether Rachel really is going to turn out to be, you know, a wicked witch. I mean, my view on this, which Louise has already briefly touched on, is that I don't see immediate tax changes. Over 99% of tax changes come in on the 6th of April. There are exceptions. They are very rare. I don't think that means that you shouldn't plan for it, but I also don't want everyone running from this room in blind panic. Please do run from this room to go and get yourself lunch. That's absolutely fine, but please don't go, oh my goodness, the entire tax regime is about to collapse around my ears. You know, we're not trying to bring that. But I'm going to throw this open, and, you know, I'll let any of my, you know, Gandalfs or Frodos or whatever Jamie is, I haven't deliberately haven't given Jamie a name for this, about, you know, okay, Jamie, let's go with you. What do you think the future may hold, apart from a naming ceremony?
So everything I say is my personal opinion. I don't know what will happen, but I have a few ideas. So with this budget that's coming up on the 30th of October, it's going to be a crucial budget for those in the crypto space. Why? So one of the things we strongly believe, collectively I believe, as let alone everyone else outside of the stage, is that there will be an increase in capital gains tax. What that will be, we'll discuss in a second. Now the reason for this belief is they've not said no explicitly, no rises, but they have for a lot of other things. Anything can change. So let's assume that this will go up, which is quite likely. What could it go up to? Everyone wants to know what that, right? And we can tie it into the tax planning of, do I want to dispose of it now or later? I think there are there's many options, but I think there are three main opportunities of where they could go with this. Now, the first one is, at the moment, it is 10% and 20%, and there's nothing else above that for capital gains tax. Income tax regime is 20%, 40, and then 45. So the first thing they could do is introduce an additional rate bracket for the capital gains regime, 30%, 40%, whatever it might be. So we'll have 10, 20, and then another one on top. Possible, don't think it's likely to happen. The second option is horrific, where they match it to income tax. So income tax 20, 40, 45, capital gains tax 10, 20 goes to 20, 40, 45. Not great. Luckily for us, I don't think they're going to do that either. So what I've been saying for quite some time now, and I strongly believe, is that they will match it to the dividends rates. So what is the dividends rate? 8.75%, 33.75%, and 39.35%. Not too bad, but still a significant increase. Now, with this would mean that it's possible to still be more efficient within a limited company, but not for a majority of cases for the average retail investor, which is fine when you include your expenses for limited companies, etc. It also, this is recorded, right? Yeah, fine, it'll be fine. My lawyer, if anyone asks. I can see the government spinning this and going, whoa, we've reduced your tax rates from 10% to 8.75. Yes, you have, but you've also increased it significantly for the other brackets, which most people would be within, if I'm perfectly honest. So I can see that happening. I strongly believe that. And then the next question is, when will that be brought in? I actually disagree with you, Mark. I think that there is a strong chance that they will include it's called an anti-forestalling measure, whereby they bring it in immediately. The main reason I believe that will happen is, and I'm only like 51, 52% sure, is that I believe it could affect the FTSE, let alone the crypto space, if everyone starts disposing quite dramatically, shall we say. Not to say that wouldn't happen anyway, because if that does come in, there's a very small window when they announce it to when it is implemented for you to do so. So the next question is, okay, what can you do about that? Leave the country, to be perfectly honest. Again, I don't think this will happen, but please be aware and keep an eye out for any exit tax. It wouldn't surprise me if this were to come in. I doubt it, because we have a very good statutory residency test system at the moment that it would completely override, to be honest. But there is still a chance that they do that to kind of capture you and force you to pay taxes in the UK. But that's what I think will happen on the 30th of October, and there's really interested to see what's going on. Unfortunately, I'm actually playing at a wedding because I'm in a Disney band, so I can't be tweeting too much, but I'll try and be free in between.
It's an interesting one though, right? Because capital gains tax doesn't raise that much in the grand scheme of things. And I know 14 billion to many probably sounds like a lot. But that's what it raised in 23-24, I think, expectations, was around 14 billion. And the problem is, if you change capital gains tax, what happens?
Don't sell.
People don't sell. Why would you sell? I mean, that's not great for crypto, right? But typically, if we look at tax as a way of incentivizing economic activity, then you raise that and people don't sell. So I'm not disagreeing that it may go up or down, and I would strongly suggest just keeping an eye on the news, because any big things tend to get leaked before budget day, because they don't want the shock and horror of everyone running for the hills, panicked because capital gains tax are raised.
We've definitely seen that in the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we've obviously talked a fair amount. Does anyone have any questions? I won't necessarily make you a Lord of the Rings meme just by asking questions.
Sorry, Mark, we're being told we're cut. We have said too much. Delete the footage. We were never here.